Cool, thank you, John. If I could get somebody just to dim the lights while I introduce Rob, please, that would be great. Well, it's usually you start a presentation, the lights are blurring and nobody can see what's going on. I'd like to introduce Rob, our guest speaker, Rob Somerfield, who I think everybody probably in this room knows, or will certainly know as Rose. How many of you got Rob Somerfield Rose? Roses. I've known Rob, I think 22 years, and certainly in that time his rose breeding has come on leaps and bounds. I'm probably sure Rob will say some of those roses from 22 years ago we wouldn't see the light of day now. Rob's also been very generous to the Rose Societies, not just here in Manawatu but around the country. Most of you will know Pacific Glory, which was the convention rose for the World Federation event we held here in 2013. Rob very kindly donated that to us. And more recently is the Pride of Palmy Rose. And Rob took up the challenge from the Mayor of Palmerston North. He was wanting a rose named for Palmerston North for the Trial Grounds 50th, and Mr. Mayor wanted a green one, and so that's not going to happen, Mr. Mayor. It won't sell, although green with envy is a great rose, but it would not probably, for the city of Palmerston North, probably that would be the right name. So we got the name Pride of Palmy, which was in a competition 2 years ago, and we've actually got one on the raffle table tonight. And for those of you who come to the Ranfurly, there'll be another one on the Ranfurly day as well. So without further ado, I'll introduce you to Rob, and I'm going to try and go at live streaming this, so I'll get set up. Thank you, Rob.
I bred my first rose in 1983. It's something, even as a youngster, I wanted to do. Don't ask me why. Roses wasn't really a thing in my family, or I thought, but my mother grew 3. They were climbers, but she pruned them like bush roses, so they never really climbed properly. But even as a youngster going to school, I was fascinated by these, and my love for them just grew. And I am interested in plants in general, but roses I wanted to breed new ones. So that's what I did in 1983. My first rose was a Command Performance seedling. Does everybody remember that rose? Orange, a little bit like Alexandra, I suppose. The resulting rose was very similar to Command Performance, but it got terrible powdery mildew. But it was a start. Here's my own rose. Nobody else has got it, that sort of thing. So I actually early on I was working in a plant nursery, subtropical plants, grafting them, that sort of thing. And I got asked to go and work for a local rose grower who grew just a very few roses, Peter Bailey, and he got me really interested in them. Gave me 3 rose bushes, which I took home, and that was the beginning of it, really. Now, I'll just briefly go over why you do them from seed. You get variation from seed. Next one. Yeah, here we go. Just to show the example, can everybody see past me? I feel like it's hard to. All these 4 roses are roses that I've released, and they're all anniversary times Sky Tower. So there's the variation. If you're familiar with them, if you're not familiar with them, Sky Tower is a climber, and it's pink. It's a fluorescent sort of pink, and anniversary is closer to the whiter end of pink. But within Sky Tower, there was hot chocolate. So it's not actually what you've got in front of you. It's all the genes that have been added, you know, one generation back, two generations back. So I believe that's where this sort of colour is coming from. The hot chocolate, but yeah, tremendous variation. So once you've got a rose that you like, a seedling, if you take a cutting from it, or graft or bud it, you'll get exactly the same. Whereas if you take seeds off, say wild, that's not right.
That's
Yeah,
big
so
line.
swap these two. Yeah. Most of you have realised, yeah. Yeah, this is wild cherry. Most of, if you took seedlings from that, you'd get a similar sort of variation. What people don't realise is there's so much rubbish, real stuff that's of no use whatsoever. Singles can be nice, but public aren't really after singles. Things that have real problems. So probably, it'd be, I'm only guessing now, probably 3,000 or 4,000 roses were grown to get those 4. Yeah. So it's a lot you've got to throw away. Now, seed parents is the most important thing to me. I believe you've got to know what you're trying to breed and pick a rose that roses, 2 roses, that will give you that sort of, have got a chance of giving you that sort of, those sort of characteristics. I use the analogy, if you were breeding a Melbourne Cup winner, you wouldn't use the cat down the road as a parent. You invariably could win, but your chances are a lot better if you get the real top line. So that's always been my theory with breeding roses: deciding what I want, and then getting parents, good parents, that will hopefully fit those. So once you've sorted that out, you pollinate them, which is cutting the anthers out and using pollen from another source to get your seeds. You wait for those hips to form and ripen. Usually it's about 4 months, 3 to 4 months anyway. And then you've got to extract the seed, which is a real job. Isn't it, John?
It always is.
It's a shocking, but anyway, it's a necessity. And then they're stratified, which means put in the fridge for a while. Especially in our climate. Here you might be all right outside, but they need cooling to break the dormancy. And then they germinate, and you wait for your flowers. It takes only about 2 months from when they germinate to get your first flower. Get a plant that high, so a little flower like this, but you get the colour, you get an indication of how many petals. It'll always, as it gets older, it'll always add more. But you can, and I make my first decisions on that first flower. All this rubbish that I'm talking about. Yeah. It might be a technical term, but you know what I mean. So once they start flowering, then you have got to do your selection. And I found this was something that you couldn't read a book and say you choose that, and that. It's something that is just experience, and I think you get better and better at it. I think some people are better than others, from the beginning and right through. But my selection criteria are, I say the first 3 most important ones are health. That's health is really important to me with roses, because this is a group of rose enthusiasts, but people that just want to grow roses for flowers, don't want to be spraying them every 5 minutes. They want something that will more or less look after themselves, and that's the rose I'm trying to breed. You can't just do it in 1 generation. It takes dozens, lots and lots. So you get little incremental improvements, hopefully, through each crossing you make. That's the theory of it anyway. Flower numbers and bush shape are very, very important to me. I try and pack as many flowers on a bush as I can. I get a bit of stick from it, about it. I hear often, oh, where are all the hybrid teas? But I work on the theory that there's other people doing that. I generally find the floribundary type ones, it's easier to get good health. So that's one advantage. And bush shape's really important to me. I like to have them nice and rounded, not up here with a flower on, something out here. That's a personal thing. Linda and I also own Glenhaven Roses, which is our sort of selling arm for our new releases, and we sell most of them in flower or coming into flower. So we want something that'll perform well in the bush, a bush that'll perform well in a pot. Repeat is important. But I think without exception, all mine repeat because of the parents I use. But one interesting fact is they seem to think repeat flowering is a mutation. You think of all the old species roses, they tend to flower once and then you don't see them until next time round, until next year. So they seem to think that's a mutation. Leaf colours important. I love to see the dark glossy foliage, and that goes back to parent selection. If you start off with the right parents, you'll get a lot of your offspring that are like that. Roses that fade really, really annoy me. There's two types of fade. There's fade that looks horrible, totally horrible, but there's also fades that they blend and the two combinations look good on the plant, so that's not quite so bad. But it's hard to get them not fading. Yellows are particularly bad, but there are some stable yellows now. Aging gracefully. That's hopefully you people don't see too many roses that don't age gracefully, but in the nursery, while we're selecting, there's roses that will just turn brown and sit on the bush and turn into crisp brown petals. A lot of burn around the edges. They might have petals that start off like this and then they drop down. Also get affected by water. So there's a lot of those things. But hopefully before you people get them, all of those have been weeded out. So that's aging gracefully. Weather resistance. I hate to see roses that spoil in the weather. I used the variety AHRI, which was a very good variety in its day, and still is. I used that for a while, and I found that threw me too many plants that the flowers look great, but then as soon as it rained, they all. So that one had to come out. Parent selection again. Parent selection for what I want. I'm down to number 8 now. That's flower colour and form. The things I've mentioned so far is trying to build a plant. And it's no good to me to have a beautiful flower sitting on a plant that the leaves fall off or is a horrible shape. So I try and get all the rest, select all the rest first, and then, is that flower form okay? There's all sorts of different flower forms. But as long as it's an acceptable flower form, that's all right for me. And colour. I don't worry too much about colour, because if I asked everybody in this room their favourite rose, I'd probably get, how many here, 50? We'd probably get 45 different answers. So, and colours. Well, not 45 colours, but you know what I mean. So, to me, colour is a personal thing, so I put less importance on that. In saying that, there's certain colours that influence me, but I really try not to put that to the back of my mind. And fragrance. I know most of you think it should be at the top of the line. I used to think fragrance and poor health were tied together genetically, but I'm sure they're not now. I've learned a lot over the years. I say a lot of the older roses that are fragrant, you have more problems with disease, etc. Fragrant Cloud, Double Delight, beautiful roses, but if you're not spraying them every 5 minutes, they can give you problems. But I think that goes back to the selection criteria. You're selecting for fragrance. Ooh, that one smells really nice. We'll hold on to that one rather than look at all the other different characteristics. So, yeah, but I have found recently that I'm getting a lot of fragrance coming into my crop after 5 or 6 generations of using fragrant stuff further back, and it just disappeared. Anything that was healthy tended not to have fragrance, but now it's appearing from where I'm not quite sure. So that's a real good sign, exciting. If there's any questions, please ask. I'm doing a lot of talking up here. Please. Yes.
When you're selecting your parents, do you place more emphasis on the where you're selecting the pollen from, or where you're selecting the mother plant, if you like?
No, I don't. And to be honest, there may be. I'm not. I guess I understand genetics just a little, just enough to get me into trouble when I'm talking about it.
Yeah.
So I don't really understand too much, but there may be differences, but I'm not too aware of it. I think the most important thing is a lot of roses now won't form hips easily. Wild roses tend to, because they've been surviving out in the wild for thousands of years, whereas the modern roses have been mollicoddled in glass houses, and if they don't reproduce very well, it doesn't really matter because they're going to get budded or taken cuttings or so forth. So I do think fertility in roses is probably dropping, but that doesn't matter for growers. So if it's a good seed setter and seed germinator, the two things are sort of different. You can have a good seed setter with very poor germination. So you want it with both. Then if I was using 2 parents, I would use the one with the best germinating and hip forming capabilities. Answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Rob,
Yeah, sorry.
do you have pools for your crossing?
Do
So
I have-
like a white pool, a pink pool, a red pool, so particular parents, and then you only use particular pollens to go onto them for a certain colour break?
No, I don't. I'm not that organised, John. What I do is I will, in an ideal world, I will use 2 distinct colours to get, this is for colour, to get as big a variation as I can, and you get that big colour range. But often, usually I am trying to get some other characteristic like very good health, or bushiness or dark foliage as well. So often I'll end up using pinks are shockers because about 50% of the roses that open are pink, although pink is a very diverse colour. But I'm finding a lot of the healthy stuff I'm getting is pink, but that is because, as I just said, 50% tend to be pink. So then I've got to try and change the colour. I think I got off topic a bit, John. The answer was no.
I could ask a lot of questions, but maybe you need to see.
But for example, that you got those two greens, you must definitely try to use them to create green or not?
No, I didn't. No. Where do you get a green rose from? There weren't that many. No, I'll talk about the green rose at the end if that's all right.
Okay.
Yeah, rather than get sidetracked. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Now, I explained the characteristics that I'm looking for. Now, to achieve that, when the pink flower carpet came out, I introduced that into my breeding program, and that must have been almost 25 years ago now. What I wanted was the health, and I love flower carpet roses, but I use roses in inverted commas. Although they're genetically roses, they're sort of treated as shrubs more than the rose on the nice long stem. So what I wanted to do was lift them up off the ground and put a big flower on and retain that health. And that was a bit of a mission. I made a whole lot of crosses, and I'd get plants that would be a nice mound like this for their first flower, and then they'd send up big shoots for, I'm going to have some climbers here. But none of them ever quite climb, but they, big gawky looking plants. But then I got a rose which I've since named Cupid. Yep, that's the one. So that's where the basis of maybe 40 or 50% of my line now comes from. You can see flower numbers. The other thing I like about this is, see how it's in full flower. I won't climb up there. See that shoot there that hasn't got any flowers yet, but before it's finished flowering, it's starting to regrow. There's another one over here. That's a really good sign if you can see that in a rose, because once those have all gone, by the time that's finished, that'll just about be flowering again. You deadhead everything else, and then they're 6 weeks away, so you get a good repeat. The foliage on that is bulletproof. It really is. It's every bit as good as the flower carpet. It was bred from the pink flower carpet, and it was just a seedling, which second time I've mentioned a seedling. Not a cross. I was very lucky to get that, because it was the type of plant I was after. That's grown on standard, but the plant gets about this big. It's not massive by any means. But I've got a lot of flower. If we could have the next one. This is the second generation of flower carpets. I crossed them with all sorts of things, and all sorts of different varieties. A lot of fragrant varieties. Thought I'd get fragrance in, and there was only one. I must have done 2,000, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just guessing, but it would be at least that. And only one had fragrance. This one, purple pizzazz. So, my knowledge of genetics is not that good, but I understand that it's going to be a recessive, fragrance must be a recessive gene in some way. And possibly that's where I lost a lot of my fragrance. I got the good health, but lost the fragrance. And it's taken a while to come back. Sorry. Fireball, Picardie, swap the first two. All those roses have been released. I didn't set out the smaller roses, this sort of size. I sort of call them patio loosely. They tend to be quite a mound. They're good. They're all good roses, within themselves. But wasn't the type I was going for, but they were good enough to release. Piketty, this one in the corner, that's one that I really like. It's I don't think it's never caught on like I feel it deserves to. It's very good in my view. And
Does that flower for a really long time?
yeah, it just smothers itself.
Oh.
And it does do that thing that I showed on the Piketty. Yeah.
That's lovely.
It's a hand painted, of course, and you'd probably be aware that the hand painted tend to lose, once the heat comes out, they lose that hand paintedness, meaning this lighter colour around the edge. But that one holds on pretty well. So that was a good point as well. Right, where am I up to? I've got. Yeah, so I've got the health and the flower numbers and the leaf colour. I think it's very of the Piketty and of the Cupid, and it's come through into these as well, the flower. And as I explained, fragrance was very hard to get, but I got the one, which was a starting point. Right, now, these are examples of the next generation. It's either third or fourth. I didn't, this is when they started getting big the next time around. This is Nightlight. It's a rose I particularly like. I am very hard on my roses. I always find something that I don't like, and that tends to override all the good points. It's just in my makeup. But this one is, we grow up in the nursery and you just see this line of yellow, creamy yellow flowers. It's just lovely. I've always liked the rose, Helena, and it's sort of in that same colour. So here I am saying I don't worry about colour, but it's one that is very attracted to me. It is a hybrid tea. And it has a lot of flowers too. So it's one that I really like. It's about 2 years, Linda. It's been on I think it's been on the market 2 years. Its petals drop nicely, which pickers of flowers don't like, but lazy gardeners, if I can call them that, do, because you don't have to deadhead it. And that is something that I select for also. But I do get it in the neck sometimes. So come inside and all the petals are on the table. Yeah, but that's how you stop. I should have mentioned this before. There's one way that you get them to age gracefully if the petals drop off before they start dying. So it's a good characteristic.
Nice name too.
You like it?
I do.
Yeah, well, that was my son. He's named a couple now. He comes up with these. Yeah, I agree. It suits the rose. Yeah, feeling better. That's been around about 3 years, I think. That rose was quite a breakthrough for me. It's just its habit, its health. Its health is just amazing, and the number of flowers it has. I write it down as a floribunda hybrid tea, but I guess you've got to call it a floribunda. It just has so many flowers. You look along the row, it's just packed with flowers. It drops its petals, which is a good characteristic. Now it was it was named for the Look Good, Feel Better Foundation. That was the one after Looking Good. So they got the two. And fortunately I've never had known anybody that's had anything to do with it personally, but what a fantastic crowd. So very, very honoured to be able to name a rose for, or two roses for. So that's feeling better. this is French Connection, which is not on the market yet. It will be one day, but at the moment it's in France and they kind of like it, so I'm hoping they will release it. I'm not going to release it here until they've made a decision. That's one that is one of these healthy pinks that I was talking about. That is exceptional. I've got rows that I use for my pollen. They're on short standards, and I trim them off at the same time. I trim my plants inside, so they all start flowering at the same time. So I've got got plenty of pollen to use. And about 3 weeks ago, there was no flower on anything because they'd been trimmed back. And here was this plant with not a blemish on it. Hadn't been sprayed since November. Not a blemish on it, and a lot of the other ones were starting to get quite bare now. And what's that rose? I went and read the label, and it's French Connection. It is really, really healthy. I don't know if anybody remembers the rose Pink Ice. It was released a long time ago. It's a Mayon rose. I'm sure that's where the health genes come from. It's incredible. Yeah. So I'm really excited about that. Yeah. So hopefully you'll see it one day. Yeah. Quintessential. Some of you might have seen that in the trial ground. That did well in the trial ground. That's this went through the trials when, hey? Not last year, there before?
Yeah, 2019.
Yeah. I think that was taken in the trial grounds, that photo, and it's not staged. That's what it looked like all over. I really love that rose. Here we go with that Elena colour again. You're starting to see my bias. But it's got good health and it just has so many flowers. You can see, like it's really heavy at the moment, the flowers, but you can see buds coming through. Yeah, so that'll be flowering for a long time yet. Once again, that's not on the market. We're waiting for France to see what they want to do with it. Yeah, but that's one I'm quite excited about. I'm looking forward to putting on the market. Grandma's rose. That was in the same trial, I think. Yeah. And won the gold star. Here's the fragrance starting to come through. That's got, they've both got flower carpet, of course, and the fragrance is coming. One of its parents was purple pizzazz. So we brought the fragrance through. The story behind that is, I think it was Amanda, our little daughter and little child, our daughter. She said, "Oh, that's Grandma's colour, my mother." Because it is quite an unusual colour. It's difficult to photograph, really. I sort of call it red, and then I got smacked on the hand. No, it's not red. It's sort of a blend between.
It was a bucket photograph from the trial.
Yeah. But they said, Amanda said, that's Grandma's colour. So we decided to call it Grandma's rose, which my mum was very thrilled about. But it hasn't seen it onto the market. It'll be released next winter. We've just bought it next 12 months' time, 14 months' time. That's an exciting one. Another one not on the market, that was last year, I think. High Fashion. That's one that I've liked for a long time. It just snuggles itself with these big flowers. I've seen heads that are that big and flat across the top. Not that it's probably any use to anybody, but it's quite fascinating. Yeah, you know, you can pick it and put it in a big vase and have a perfect arrangement. So that's another one. I think Amanda might have named that one too. She did. The children are becoming useful. Well, young adults. Well, yeah, adults. So, yeah. You like it?
Yep.
That's yet to be named. It will be marketed, but once again, we're just waiting on to see what happens overseas. I've never really tried for this quartered sort of style, but I really like that one. That's a true, I was going to say David Austin shape. It's probably not quite right, but quartered. Thing I like about it is it comes definitely one to a stem, and a big strong stem, so it'll be fantastic for picking. And it's not one that you pick and put in a vase and then it falls. It stays for quite some time. A lot of those David Austin ones seem to fall. Pretty heavy. No. So, that's the thing, you can't get everything. I actually mentioned 9 characteristics, and there's a few other minor ones, but you can never get them all. If you can get about 6 or 7, you're doing pretty well. But yeah, that's one I did particularly like. Yeah. So we'll give that a name one day and bring it forward, hopefully. Yeah, that's sort of more going back to the one that's more gone back to the flower carpet style, because you do get throwbacks. In the early days, I experimented with stripes because they were getting a lot of sort of coverage, and then I found Kiwis didn't really like striped roses.
I love them.
Yeah, that's right. You always get someone in the crowd. But I do think it's changing. I do think there's a bigger acceptance for them now, and I'll sort of move back and doing a little bit. But probably missed the boat with that. We've got to try. Yeah. So that's a nice healthy one. At its best, it looks really good.
Will you release that?
Oh. It may never get released, but hopefully there'll be others. Yeah. So yeah. Look, part of the problem is there's a lot of red striped roses out there. Most of them have come from France and from America, and so just adding another one. It's quite expensive to put a rose on the market. So you want to make sure that it's going to be. It's a bit. I treat red striped roses a bit like pink roses. There's 50% of striped roses I think are red. Would you agree, David?
Yeah.
Yeah, red and white. That's the most common, I think. So you're competing with a lot of others. So
I think red was purple with all these others.
yeah. That's it. So it's got blackberry nip in it further back, but it's easy to lose that purple colour. Yeah. And that's the last of them. On the wrong page. It's not very well organised.
When you're talking about see what happens overseas, what influence is that having on re-releasing them in New Zealand?
If I could get, I got told this figure years ago, so I'm not sure that it's still up today, but flower carpet people told me that this was probably 15 years ago. We sell one, for every rose we sell of a variety, we sell in New Zealand we'll sell 3 in Australia, we'll sell 20 in Europe, and we'll sell 40 in USA. So by releasing it too early, you can lose PVR rights. In USA, it's got to be PVR'd within a year of the first release anywhere around the world. So you've got to make sure overseas people, if they're going to do something with it, do it, if not first, are ready to go close to you. So that's what's holding out. New Zealand's such a very small market. Now I was going to talk about the Persica roses, Alpina persica. That's a photo, it's not mine, of the species rose that they all started from. These are the ones with the spots. That's what it started from. It's a desert rose.
From Persia?
Yeah.
From Persia?
Yeah. It's very, very thorny. See that? I've never actually seen a plant in real life, but very thorny. I spoke to Chris Warner, a breeder in England, about it many, many years ago, and I said to him, "Oh, being species rose, it must be healthy," and he said, "No, it's not. I think what it is being a desert plant, it comes into a humid environment and it gets every disease under the sun." It was Jack Harkness, wasn't it? Jack Harkness, who did the first work with them in the 60s. They first called it a rose, and then they decided it wasn't, which happens in botanical naming quite often. They changed their mind. So it's a slightly different to the rose, but he started crossing them with roses back in the 60s. And it took them a long time to get anywhere. The first ones, I think, were sterile and then hard to propagate and all sorts of problems.
What do you think he was looking for to do that?
That spot.
The
Spot. That's what they're trying to emphasise. So then he passed on, and Chris Warner took over, amongst there's other people too. But Chris did a really good job because he's a real stickler for health. If it's not healthy, he'll turf it. And we're very lucky with the health animals we get today. They've got good health. I believe we've got to pat Chris Warner on the shoulder because he's come up with some good stuff. When did they start getting released? Probably only 10 years ago. Like there was the tiger and
probably, UK were probably 15, no more than 15 years ago.
Yeah, so that's 1960 was a long time earlier than that. There were a couple, a few that I'm aware of that got released, but they weren't successful.
Euphrates was a very early one.
Euphrates, that's right. Tigris.
Yes, and also, it's gone, but
Yeah.
there were a couple that were really
Yeah,
early.
yeah.
But they were harmless and they were in good health. But as you said, then they got much good health.
We had one of the Chris Warner ones went through the trials about 2002, and it was healthy, but it had about 5,002 years.
But one thing that I've found with breeding with them is they've got a fade gene in them. It's almost impossible to get one that won't fade, except for when you use white, because you can't fade from white. But they do. They all fade to my knowledge. Could we have the next one, please? And this is where I've got with them. Ink spots, that's going to be released this spring. That's I like it. It's really showy at its best. It's a single, but you really got to, these roses have really got to be singles or close to it to show that eye. If you have a big hybrid tea, you might at the end of the day. So I believe that's a limiting factor with them because even though there'll be people here that say they like single roses, the average Kiwi doesn't seem to. Although with these eyes, it's something different, so they are popular. And I Spy is a climber that we released last year, I think. Yeah. It failed badly, unfortunately. And these are a couple that probably won't make it, but it just shows you the variation.
Oh, it's so lovely.
Sarah's shock.
If you photograph the flower right, you can sell any rose to anybody. You get it just at the right stage. There's so much more in breeding a rose. There's so much more to a rose than that flower at the right time. And that's the problem with these. I looked hard at this one because it was a bit different, but it's a bit of a out of control plant.
Was that in trial a couple of years ago?
Yep. It hasn't been mown off yet, John, but I don't think it'll make it. And that's the pink one there. It's really been done before. So that's an interesting variation where they've come from that yellow. And also though, you've got climbers, you've got ones that run along the ground, you've got bush, but I'm trying to get the bush. From what I've seen initially, they were all this size flowers, quite small flowers. This is why I got excited about this one. It was slightly double, but it has quite a big flower, something more like that, about 3 or 4 inches across. But now I see there's roses like that coming from overseas, so I'm not the only one. I've actually noticed some quite nice ones coming from Dixon's in the larger size. So they've got a way to go yet. Right, any questions so far? I've been doing a lot of talking. Yeah?
Well, the Pacific Glory, I've noticed quite a bit of colour variation in different areas.
Yes.
It'll be much pinker here and it's more lilac somewhere else. What is it that does that? It's environment, and also I think soil has a problem, has a difference too. But you can't sort of identify what in the soil?
No, look, soil I'm just guessing about. Definitely environment, which is temperature really. You'll find they're deeper in the spring and the autumn, and they're light coloured over that heat, which is the same with so many roses. It's quite a problem in the nursery industry. People ring up, this rose is nothing like it is on the label. They vary. Picatee, do you remember that pink one in the corner that I said was hand painted?
Yeah.
We had a lady ring up from Cambridge, and it was actually a Cambridge Mitre 10. And she said, I've got this lady here that's not happy about this rose. And so I talked to her, and what it was white with just a few stripes of pink on it. But it was so cold that hand painted had gone right over the petal. And she wasn't happy at all. She thought I was telling her a load of rubbish. And I said, well, you take it home and you try it, and if you're not happy with it, bring me back and I'll replace it. And I never heard from her. They just, some more than others, but they do vary, and temperature seems to be the biggest thing. But I do suspect soil type does too. Maybe in the bud, yeah. Yes, it's quite a it's quite a complex colour really. In the buds, there's quite a lot of tan, yeah.
Well, you said that when you plant your seedlings, you just let them flower once and then you make your decision on it. Do you pull them out then? Or how?
I prick them out first.
Yeah.
I pull out the ones I want, which are in little pots,
Oh,
little
right.
tubes. So I pull out the ones I want, and then the others can have another flower. I reduce them by about, I maybe keep 10% if I'm lucky.
Of how many would you sow? How many seeds?
You're in shot. Oh look, I don't know how many seeds I sow because I don't count
Do you know
that
how
sort of
many
thing.
hips you go through a year though? Do you have a set number that you do?
No.
Like John has a set number.
But I know what I prick out, and it's usually around 15,000.
Oh.
Yeah. But most breeders do count. They know exactly the germination rate and so forth,
Yeah.
but because they plant them individually in beds,
Yeah.
you know, 2 inches apart or something, so they can easily work out what they've done. We scatter ours
Oh,
and
you
then,
scatter
and then
them.
prick them out. So I've got better things to do than keep all those records. I'm not a great record keeper, but hopefully I'll keep most of it up here. All the important stuff anyway. All right, well, yeah, look, just in trying to do a conclusion here. I feel I'm so lucky having taken on rose breeding. I tell everybody to listen, it's the best job in the world, and there's so few of us. It's just such a fascinating job. I've had a lot of help and encouragement from Sam McGreedy and Nola in particular, but you know, so many others. And I've met so many great overseas breeders that I sort of felt like I should be in the same room with. But when you get talking to them, they're just exactly the same as me. They have the same problems, they're after the same things, and they're really down-to-earth people. I found I just love talking to people that breed stuff, whether it be sheep, cattle, anything. It's like we're all on the same wavelength. It's almost like a little club. You're hard to explain, but I find them really easy to talk to. Yeah, and hopefully there'll be many more varieties to come. Oh, I've missed one, haven't I? Okay.
Yes.
Sorry, I forgot about that. We'll have to do this in a, this is fine now. Yeah, hopefully there'll be more varieties to come. What people don't realise is 10 years from when the seed germinates to when you release it, minimum really, in my view. If you're poking them out earlier than that, you're not doing your selection properly. So if I stop today, you know, it's still 2031, but I'm not going to stop today. I can't envisage not breeding roses. It's just such a fantastic job. I'm really lucky. Right, now the one I forgot, green roses. Right, in the very early days, I made a cross of strawberry ice and Class Act. Do you remember Class Act?
Yeah.
Everybody knows strawberry ice. And one of the seedlings that came up was white with green, you know, distinctive green, especially basil petals. But so I thought, oh wow, I've got something really good here, and grew it on for a few months, and the leaves kept falling off. It was just so unhealthy. Which is what happens with oddball colours, I think. You know, one's a bit out of the ordinary because you've got one of them, so that's the one you pick, and chances are it's not going to have the health attributes that you want. Whereas if going back to the pink, if you're selecting from pinks, when 50% of your crop is pink, it's easy to pick something that's healthy. So anyway, persisted with this for years, and that it's about as green as I got, but it was really quite green. And then I kept sort of line breeding, breeding from seedlings within seedlings to try and intensify the colour, which happened, but I couldn't get the health right. And then one day I got lemon and lime, which is a lot lighter than that. But right over here. Is it? Oh, there we go. Just as well, you went through the photos before we came. Yeah, so I've got lemon and lime, which is quite light, and I named it lemon and lime. Well, I've been chasing this green because I wasn't prepared to call that green. It's definitely green tinges to it. The owner, I had a bit of trouble sorting out what colour it was. I'm not very good at colours at the best of times, but my then neighbour was Ian Duncalf, who owned Harbour Plants. Some of you may have heard of him. A fantastic plantsman, really knew his plants. But, I really respected his sort of judgment on things. And I said to him, what colour's that in? And he said, well, it's not cream, and it's not yellow, it must be green. So we call it lemon and lime anyway, just to have a hint of green. And that's been really, really popular for us. But I crossed that back with some of the other stuff and gave a lot better help. So the next one is Grandview. Yeah, so that's where that came from. Just a bit of a story on that. We released it last year. Normally, if we release a new variety, we'll do maximum 800. We did 2,500 of this and thought, oh, that's far too many. You see rows and rows in the paddock. So I was sort of very worried. Went on the market and I was scared to answer my email or answer the phone. It just sold out like that. We could have sold it at least twice that many and probably 3 times as many. And then of course it's a 2-year crop. So what we did, we had to graft a second lot before we ever sold anything, before we knew how it's going to sell. So we're scrambling around, trying to do 1-year plants for this spring and so forth. But it's great to have a rose that's so popular. It's probably, I say it's been in excess of 30 years, and it is. It's probably closer to 35 years that I've been working on that green rose. So it's not perfect, but it's different and yeah, pretty good. One of the issues with it is it won't drop its petals. The green colouring is chlorophyll, which you get in the leaves, and it tends to intensify as it ages rather than fade like most roses, and but it won't drop. And being a light colour, they'll go brown and they'll pop, and I'll get pink spots in rain, which people get a bit upset about sometimes, but I haven't been able to overcome that yet. I'm trying to mix it with a rose that drops its petals early, so hopefully one day I'll get there and overcome it that way. But it's something quite different. Who grows it here? Just a few. So that's my green story. Thank you very much. I should have said there's a book of photos here that I can hand around and people can have a look at if they like. Do you want to hand it around or come up here and have a look? Cool. And there's a few here of the newer releases, the single ones are the newer releases.
New releases this year? Or?
Newer releases, sorry, newer.
Thank you very much, Rob. And has anybody got any questions before I finish up? No. Thank you, Rob, and also Linda for coming down. And we've got a trial ground meeting tomorrow, so I thought, right, we're going to get Rob along and speak to us. So on behalf of Manawatu Road Society, I'd like to present you with a copy of our history and also a little token of our appreciation for coming along. And thank you very much. Nola wrote 50 years and I've done the last 20, so it's really a lot of her work. Next thing is raffles.